Have you ever bought a game, played for an hour, and just felt nothing? We all hate that feeling, right? It is the worst kind of buyer's remorse. So for this list, we're focusing on the opposite experience. We'll talk about these games that grabbed my attention immediately and refused to let me walk away from the controller. So let's get started.
Let's rock! This is awesome!
Okay, so first up we have Hi-Fi Rush. So, Hi-Fi Rush came out of absolutely nowhere, right? It was shadow dropped with zero hype. And then I played the first hour, and it instantly became one of my favorite openings ever. You are Chai, this total screw-up who accidentally turns himself into a human iPod. Suddenly, the whole world is moving to his playlist. We are talking about everything like the background objects, UI elements, and even the way Chai taps his foot while standing around. It all pulses to the beat. I mean, it creates this vibe where you are constantly aware of the tempo. Then the combat clicks and you realize enemies are swinging on that same beat, so you are essentially dancing through fights. But the secret sauce is the music mixing. If you are offbeat, the track sounds hollow. But if you actually nail the timing, the song builds up, adding layers of guitar and drums until you are in the middle of this epic rock opera. The first boss fight throws 9-inch nails at you, and I was just sold. It proved that Tango Gameworks, the horror studio, had just made the most joyful and rhythmically precise action game of the year.
Who are you? What are you doing here?
My faithful disciple will show her the path.
Coming in next, Resident Evil 4 Remake was one game that put Sony's so-called remake directive into perspective for me. The remake directive, of course, meaning they're trying to push a lot of remakes out because they're safe bets. I've talked about it in other videos, but anyway, when the AAA debacle with Resident Evil 3 Remake happened, I was like, I don't really want more of these things. I like the original Resident Evil 2. I like the original Resident Evil 3. And I gotta imagine they were doing the original Resident Evil 4. And regardless of whether or not you like the original Resident Evil 4, that game does not benefit from a shinier coat of paint because in all honesty, it's a perfectly fine-looking game to this very day. However, it did not just get a coat of paint. This was not a cash-in. They went in and changed a lot of this game. These weren't just graphical changes, and it doesn't actually derail it. In fact, it makes it scarier, improves the action, and like old school fans, you either love it or hate it as a result. I am not the biggest fan of the original Resident Evil 4. I know I'll catch some flack for that. I do think it's a good game though. I just don't go back to it. That game is pretty thoroughly of its era, and while it's good, it's goofy. And I don't mean like your Leon Kennedy goofiness. It's kind of iconic Resident Evil goofiness. I mean like full gameplay wise, it's of its time. They take this game and they make it a full, modern, completely new Resident Evil game, and it pretty much keeps everything you would actually want from Resident Evil 4 while still delivering a wholesale new experience. And what they added, it's big, it's a long game now. And keep in mind, Resident Evil 4, the original, was a pretty long game for the types of games in that era, so what they did here really turned this into a totally different, unique product that has lasting value. All I'm going to say is if we're doing this stuff, even if we're doing it cynically, then fine. Coming in next, we've got Bayonetta 3. Since the series is now a full trilogy, it's worth taking a closer look at this third entry because it was pretty divisive when it first launched. People either hated it or loved it, but now that it's 2026, we can check it out with a little more perspective. The game includes a handy feature bundled inside that lets us jump into our favorite tough levels whenever we want to practice or hunt for high scores if you're into that. But purely as a solo adventure, Bayonetta 3 is the absolute best. The wild spectacle, the vehicle stages, and the way you control every character ability during cutscenes all make you feel like the ruler of the universe. It's honestly hard to describe the sheer power of what Platinum Games creates, even though different folks tackled this one. It was a fun project for us gaming addicts who love seeing just how much a title can pull off. It's a seriously impressive title with a lot to say about its place in the trilogy, but at the end of the day, just know it's a dedicated single-player gem and one of the best of its time.
In these times of darkness, hope is the only thing that keeps us fighting. I will fulfill my destiny and save the kingdom.
All right, next up is Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I think it's easily a top-tier release for 2024 and basically a requirement for anyone who loves exploring gated maps. Since it's optimized for pretty much every system out there, you won't need a supercomputer to enjoy the ride. Seriously, it is a total win that the movement and combat feel this incredibly responsive and natural. This entry completely reboots the vibe of the series for the modern day. It mixes the time-bending powers from the 3D days with the sleek look of the classics, all packaged into a high-speed platformer with plenty of secrets. You also get some wild boss encounters and agility trials mixed with flashy attacks for when you need to clear a path through enemies. The game spaces out its new abilities, but the intensity starts climbing almost from the get-go. Most importantly, the whole experience is just pure, unadulterated fun. You won't feel like you're suffering through a grueling, soul-crushing gauntlet just to see the end. While it isn't an endless adventure, you'll likely be craving another round once you've finished off the final baddies. For a budget-friendly pick, this one really delivers an incredible amount of entertainment for what you spend.
My name is Marcus, and just like you, I was a slave. But then I chose to open my eyes.
Coming in next, we have Detroit Become Human. Now, I won't claim this is some flawless masterpiece, but it's definitely a title that deserves a shout-out. It stands out from the other picks on this list because it tackles some pretty unique concepts. I know that sounds like a stretch since we've all seen the robots go rogue trope a billion times. But, there's a twist here. They mix things up by blending the classic AI rebellion with themes of civil rights movements, which makes it feel a bit more compelling than your average sci-fi flick. The pacing is actually solid. The mood is spot on, and you follow 3 separate leads whose paths eventually cross. It turns into a pretty addictive ride, and even if the concepts aren't totally fresh, the execution is great. You've got a ton of different outcomes. Since it's basically a high-end choose-your-own-adventure, you might not even notice the branches you skipped because the narrative feels so seamless. Yeah, you'll definitely overlook some scenes, but you'll also stumble into surprises that keep you hooked, making it feel like money well spent. There is just so much variety in how things can play out, so if you're curious about the alternate paths, you can totally go back. Once the credits roll, you unlock a chapter select that lets you tweak your decisions to see how the butterfly effect changes the plot. Plenty of games try this gimmick, but I think this one pulls it off much better than the rest. Now next up we have Ghost Runner. Some of the most thrilling, high-value titles are the ones that truly value your schedule. It isn't a massive time sink, and it might lack deep mechanics or a AAA budget look, but when every moment is an adrenaline rush, that's plenty. Ghost Runner is actually impressive because of how little of your life it wastes. This rapid-fire, high-skill blend of platforming and cyborg ninja combat keeps your heart racing constantly. It is essentially 100% intensity from start to finish. Crucially, the developers kept the stage designs very lean. Rather than padding the experience with bloated maps and checkpoints, Ghost Runner sticks to tiny, digestible zones. Every fresh encounter essentially counts as its own stage. This structure lets you hammer away at the difficult parts since the difficulty spikes can get pretty intense. You won't find any boring segments to break your flow. It is strictly the good stuff with zero fluff. Jumping back in after a death happens in the blink of an eye. The team clearly prioritized getting you back into the fray instantly, which defines the whole experience. A series of tests for the player rather than a sprawling epic. That focus doesn't take away from the enjoyment at all. If anything, it makes the game better. The sequel tries to grow the concept a bit, specifically with stages that feel a bit more drawn out. That actually makes it feel a bit sluggish compared to the original, in my opinion. For a title like this, massive, sprawling environments aren't really the draw. Compact maps and constant changes were a brilliant move. Even if it was a budget-saving tactic, it ended up saving the player's time too. Coming in next, we've got Ghostwire Tokyo, which comes from the same wild minds that gave us The Evil Within. Honestly, this game takes the whole first-person horror vibe in a pretty unique direction. I mean, you aren't really dealing with your typical jump scares here. Instead, the game tries to get under your skin and just stay there, making you shudder at the thought of invisible spirits. So the basic setup for the story is actually pretty straightforward. One random night in Shibuya, this weird mist just moves in and swallows up a massive chunk of the city. Anyone who comes into contact with it basically vanishes into thin air, leaving the empty streets to be overrun by creepy supernatural entities. That said, these creature designs are easily some of the coolest things I've ever seen in a game, and the best part is that it's strictly a solo adventure. Ghostwire really feels like it was handcrafted for people who want to play by themselves. And as you're wandering through this bizarre, distorted version of Tokyo, it feels totally unlike any other open world out there. Because everyone else is gone, you start to feel like a bit of a phantom yourself. It's like you're stuck in this limbo state between the living and the dead. Even when you're just blasting ghosts with magic hand signs, the game works hard to keep you feeling anxious. You never quite know when that eerie silence is going to be shattered by something terrifying. If you're the type of person who actually enjoys walking through dark, deserted streets alone, this is definitely the game to keep you up at night. Coming in next, we have Tomb Raider. You know, I've always looked at the 2013 Tomb Raider reimagining as this cinematic blockbuster that you actually get to play. This specific take on Lara's roots feels surprisingly down to earth, you know? So yeah, it's down to earth in a way where she survives massive shipwrecks and impossible leaps, but it totally sells it. You begin the journey as a total novice, right? She's terrified and struggling, forced into gritty situations that the classic version of the character avoided. By the finale, though, you've turned into a complete powerhouse. The way it alternates between cracking ancient riddles, using stealth with your bow, and getting into intense shootouts is just handled perfectly. Playing it again today really shows you how this title set a new bar for the whole action-adventure genre. You have those clever physics puzzles, the massive Hollywood-style stunts, and then those low-key stretches where you're just exploring the remains of old expeditions. Plus, there's a real sense of nostalgia in picking this up lately. It launched back in 2013, but it holds up incredibly well. It's like one of those core milestones in gaming history where the industry really leaned into high-end realism, and honestly, the island of Yamatai still looks gorgeous. That combination of overgrown forests and crumbling shrines just stays awesome. So yeah, if you haven't played it yet, maybe this is your sign.
Huh. What is this?
Hello! Very nice to meet you.
Why did you jump out at me like that?
My name is Astra. I am a puzzle exercise assistant, or P for short.
So coming in next is the Entropy Center, which, you know, a sci-fi journey that kind of hits a bit differently. I mean, it definitely gives off those Portal vibes, except instead of warping through space, you're using a high-tech gun to rewind objects through time. You know, for a project mostly handled by one person, it's honestly super impressive because it doesn't waste any of your time with filler. It's a clean, level-by-level experience where you've got this witty talking weapon as a sidekick while you manipulate boxes and shift them back into the past. So that might sound like it could get a bit old after a while, but the beauty of this game is that it wraps up before anything feels stale. You're constantly moving into fresh scenarios like platforming challenges or unique environmental puzzles. You rarely find yourself stuck doing the exact same task twice, and if you do, there's always some sort of clever catch. The reason this weird, logic-flipping game works so well is that it's fairly brief, but it also leans into the whole idea of loops. Concepts keep coming back around, but with a fresh perspective, it's more about the underlying theme than just doing the same moves. And even though it stays lean and focused, the payoff at the end is actually fantastic. One of my biggest gripes with indie titles is that they often fail to stick the landing. They tend to just cut to black right when things are getting interesting. The Entropy Center doesn't just stay the course, it actually delivers a full, satisfying conclusion, which you don't see often for a game of this scale. Coming in next, we've got V Rising, which is, I mean, yeah, it's technically a survival game, but look, you know, just bear with me for a second. This is honestly one of those titles where the biggest drawback is just the fact that it falls into that specific category. For the most part, though, the whole Vampire Diablo vibe they've got going on is a seriously awesome concept. You're playing as a vampire stuck in the early stages of the world, so if the sun is out, you're literally toast. When it's dark, though, you're free to head out and start hunting. There's a much bigger focus on combat here, plus the boss fights are actually tough and frankly pretty fantastic. They bring a lot of depth to a genre that usually feels a bit empty in that department. And you know, the bosses remind me of something like Don't Starve, which I think I brought up back before the full version officially dropped later in the year. So you're looking at maybe 20 to 50 hours of gameplay, depending on how deep you want to go. That's definitely not a short experience, especially considering how many games lately make you trek for 90 hours just to get 10 hours of actual fun, which is something I'm getting pretty tired of and plan on calling out soon. With V Rising, however, the map isn't bloated for no reason, but it is super detailed. You've got actual villages and camps, and they all feel like distinct locations. It's a world you can actually enjoy exploring, where surviving isn't just a boring grind until you hit the endgame. The way the vampire blood tracking progression works means you're always out there hunting for rare, unique stuff that stays interesting. I don't know. It's just a solid game. It really makes a lot of the right calls. But yeah, those are just some of the games that I'm sure will keep you up all night. There are still lots out there, so if you have any suggestions, please let us know. If you like this video, click like, and if you're not subscribed, now is the best time to do so. We upload brand new videos from time to time. But anyways, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.